Hello, everyone. Dr. Anthony Criniti IV here, also known as Dr. Finance. Welcome to the Dr. Finance Live podcast. We have an amazing guest today, Steve Harrison. Steve is actually one of the top PR companies in the country, amongst so many other things. He's a publicity expert. He's the owner and founder of the National Publicity Summit, which I actually attended. He's got an unbelievable speaker training program, which I also attended, and amongst so many other things, Jack Canfield retreat. And he's going to tell us all about this today. He's going to tell us about himself, how he got started. So let's give a warm welcome to Steve. Welcome, Steve. How are you, sir?
Oh, doing great, Anthony. It's just great to be with you, and I'm looking forward to just chatting with you about, how people can be more successful with where they are and get where they're going.
Absolutely, Steve. Excited as well here. So Steve has also been a mentor in many ways. Him and his team, particularly Jeffrey Berwin, has really helped me with a lot of things. So I respect you a lot, Steve. And I definitely want to say that I appreciate all that you guys have done in my ventures to become a better speaker, amongst many other things.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, it's, as right, people have to be willing to learn and invest in themselves, just the time, and you are willing to do that. And that's why you've been so successful. That's why your podcast is just really, going at such a great trajectory. And a lot of those people you mentioned, that successful authors, whether it's Jack Canfield, they're all learners. They're all listening to podcasts like this. Even now, they are all still reading books because everything's changing, and there are some principles that kind of stand the test of time, but the application changes. And so, hey, it's a mutual admiration, man.
Thank you, Steve. And besides, we're also from Philadelphia.
That's exactly right. That's the most important thing. That's all right. I don't know what kind of Eagles. I'm not sure I'd like to see the Eagles do well this year. I'm not sure how good they're going to. Our sports teams are not doing that great, but we are thriving otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Steve. All right. And one last thing. So Steve was actually on Clubhouse about 2 months ago. I had him on stage, and he really shined. I believe you're probably still getting emails to this day of people right from the room.
it was fantastic. And it was, we talked about publicity, and I'm sure some of the things we're going to talk about today. And I appreciated that invitation.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And you're always welcome, by the way. So Steve, let's get started. I got about 20 questions or so. Figure about 2-3 minutes each. But first, I want to start out with your origin story. You taught me that term. So what is your origin story? I want to know all about Steve and how you became Steve Harrison.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think as it relates to kind of why we're here today, I graduated from Davidson College, North Carolina, and my first kind of real job was I had gone to a meeting about a job in publishing. And I'm like, okay, it'd be kind of fun to get this job in publishing. And it was also in marketing. I said, that sounds good. I go to the meeting, it was publishing, it was marketing, it was selling books door to door. And it sounded like a crazy job, but I signed up for it. And long story short, I did that job during the summer in college, and I actually got a really good experience with sales, running a business, running my own business. And one of the interesting things that I think that I learned from, because I had some good mentors, is that selling is love. Now that may sound really strange. I've given a TEDx talk on this. Selling is love. And so that's just kind of philosophically changed me. And so then my brother was doing a magazine for radio and TV producers. He was starting it right here outside the Philadelphia area. I had been dating a girl from the Philly area, long distance, and said, okay, time to see each other on a more consistent basis here. I figured I'd do it for 3 or 4 months. And here we are now, 32 years later. That's how long I've been married to the girl and still working with my brother and partner, Bill. We still do the magazine as well as a whole lot of other programs. And so it's been a family business. And one of the interesting things about the magazine, Radio TV Interview Report, is we do write-ups about authors who are available for interviews. And we found that when we wrote the copy, they'd get a lot of interviews. But when they wrote the copy, they wouldn't. And it's because we had a different approach. We knew how to write and attract the media. We knew what kind of headlines worked. And all this is by trial and error, just that ability to see and fail and succeed and learn. And that really from that one product really and service we've branched into other things as well, but that's really been the foundation.
So Steve, let's step back. Let's go chronologically. So you're not originally from Philadelphia.
No, I'm from Westchester. I grew up pretty much in Westchester County, New York, actually.
New York. Okay.
But I came here when I was 21. Been here ever since. So I feel like it's home.
So when you came to Philadelphia, you met Laura. And by the way, Laura is amazing. She also want to send a lot of thank you to her as well. She really helped me with especially the Jack Canfield retreat, et cetera. So she's very, very supportive. So you met Laura, and you initially started with this radio. What's it
TV
called?
Interview Report.
Yeah, TV Interview Report before you got into the National Publicity Summit and all that.
Yeah,
right?
because what happened, and this is kind of funny how when you start doing something, it leads to something else. So what actually happened were two things. Is I was doing panels with media, and I'd have like 300 people in the room. I have a panel of like 5 media people, TV producers, and I'd have like 300 people in the room. And I found at the end, everybody would rush up and want to meet the media. And I found it was hard, obviously, because you got so many people, most people couldn't. But if they did, good things happened. People, made connections and could get publicity that way. And I thought, wow, we ought to do an event where we actually make it super easy for people to have one-on-one time with top producers and journalists. And that's really how our National Publicity Summit came about. That's an event that we do. We did it in New York live for years, but now we do it by Zoom. So you don't even have to leave your home or office, and you get to meet over 75 media, major TV producers, journalists, podcasters, editors, and so it's interesting how you start observing. You kind of look at, what do I notice? I noticed people wanted to meet media. I noticed that they really didn't know they might want to meet media, but they didn't know what to say. So then it's like, okay, we need to provide training ahead of time so that people are at their best. And, we need to, give people a description of what each media person's looking for. So they're informed, they're able to make the most of the experience. And yeah, so that really kind of was our second main service. And then we started realizing, there's a lot of people that send us their books, and we wish, we help them get publicity, but boy, we wish we could have talked to them earlier. There are things they could have put in their book. And we thought, well, we ought to have a coaching program that helps people write their book and get it published the right way, different options. And also just teach people how to market their book without, in addition to publicity. So we created programs like our Quantum Leap program and other things that we offer at authorsuccess.com. But it's all in the spirit of basically, you've got everybody here listening has wisdom, has information they could share. And if they are willing to own their expertise that you have now and put it in a format, you can, and to get the message out, you can really monetize it effectively if you just know some things and you're willing to do some work.
That's awesome, Steve. And going back to the National Publicity Summit, if I could recall, you got the idea at the Book Expo. right?
Yeah.
You were going there every year, and that's where you noticed that these people were coming up to you.
Because I would do, as a combination, I would do a panel at the book expo, and I'd see at the book expo, people would have a booth. People were paying like thousands of dollars to have a booth. And once in a while, a media person would come by in a colored badge, and I could see the person who spent all this money in the booth, and they really wanted to meet these media. And I thought, well, what if the formula was reversed? What if the media were in the booth and you got to go talk to them, and, you know, they couldn't escape, so to speak, you know, and that's really how that whole idea came about.
Yeah, you're truly a pioneer in that, Steve. I definitely commend you on that, because that's really cool. Because if you think about what you've done, you help to empower people who normally wouldn't have been able to get contact them. Your regular person on the street, you know, to give them information. The next Michael Jackson, I call it, right? That's sitting on the corner. He's ready to go, but he don't know where to start. And if he meets a guy like you, and he listens to you, you know, and of course figures out a way to invest in you, he can make it happen, truly, because you would give him that knowledge of how to approach media. And all it takes is that one interview, right?
I mean, I've seen that happen again and again. We've had so many people who had never been on national TV before, who, because they got some training and they were able to get, because we've all seen in our life, if somebody connects us or opens a door, introduces us to someone, things happen so much more quickly. And that's really what the summit event does, is the media come and they want to learn, they want to teach and give back, because they get so many bad people, so many bad pitches, you know, people presenting themselves typically through email and things, that's just not doing it very effectively. And yeah, it's just been really rewarding. And, you know, it's been good. You know, my brother Bill and I are partners. And so, you know, he definitely gets some credit for these ideas too, as we've collaborated on just, you know, figuring out how best to serve people.
Thank you, Steve. All right. And one other thing about just yourself, why do you like the Eagles so much?
Well, you know, I think for many years I liked them because they had never won the Super Bowl. So it was just kind of, and I'm a big football fan. And I realized I grew up loving the New York Jets, but I was 4 when they won the Super Bowl. I don't remember that. But I realized I never had lived in a city where my team that I was passionate about had won the whole thing. And so that became, in the talk radio in Philly is fantastic. You know, like win or lose, you tune into Philadelphia sports radio and it's more entertaining than the game, you know, the thing you saw. So my wife, one time I did say, though, the Eagles weren't going to be very good one season. I said to my wife, I said, you know, we do spend a lot of time and energy on Sundays watching the Eagles, and they're not going to be that good this year. We could use that time doing something else, like more productive. Maybe we should think about that. And she looked at me, she's like, but it's the football season. So it's kind of good to be rabid about something that doesn't really matter.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm a big Eagles fan too, but you know, Philadelphia teams, they've known to disappoint. So that's why Philadelphia fans are probably the toughest in the world, because we get a bit, you know, most of our sports teams are not always excelling, and these people are still faithful to them. So right. that takes a lot of I guess just desire of shows a lot of loyalty of the people in this city. It's a testimony to the people of the city.
And, you know, we talked about, like, I like theater, right? But the thing, and theater, you know, there's always, how's this show going to end, or a movie. But what's really fascinating about sports is you're emotionally invested. Like, if you really like a team, you know that if they score right here and they win this game, you're going to feel really good today or tomorrow. But if they don't, it's gonna really bother you. You're emotionally invested and you have no control in the outcome. And it is entertaining from that point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to move into some other questions. So Steve, just trying to understand, you help a lot of authors, but you personally, before we get into that, how many books did you write, and what are their names?
You know what's interesting? I am like the cobbler where I've been helping everybody else and they all have shoes, but my own family is, neglected. I'm kind of so focused on helping other people with their books. I'm working on 2 books right now. But I haven't officially done my book yet. I've
really?
I've got I did a publicity course called Formulas for Fame.
Okay.
So I give 501 strategies for publicity and I make that available. But no, I'm excited. I've been doing it from the point of view of doing seminars and workshops and teaching, building my own email list, which is actually interesting because there's 2 ways of building your following. One is to do the book and then start doing publicity and start building your following because the book gives you credibility. The other thing would be to teach what you have, and in teaching and consulting and doing trainings, build your following and then do the book. And that's actually in a way can be even a better way. They're both good. You start how you start. So yeah, I'm definitely excited. I mean, I have on our website, we have a 39-page report, 6-figure mistakes authors make and stuff. I'll probably turn that into a book. But
don't you have something on Amazon? Because I could have sworn I saw something with Steve Harrison.
I think somebody took
a guide or something.
I think somebody took a recording that we do have I have an audio book with Jack Canfield.
Okay.
On how to write a book and sell a lot of copies, where I interviewed him. So what I've done in my business too is I have a lot of expertise on the publicity and the marketing side, and that's kind of the lens with which I've been looking at things. And then I have coaches on my team, like Jack Canfield in one of our programs, and other people who know even a lot of the nitty-gritty publishing stuff much better than I, who advise my clients. So it's a good example where a lot of times if you're thinking of doing something, you don't have to have all the answers. You've got to, they'll be willing to bring together the people who do.
Absolutely, Stephen. I'm just reflecting on your situation, and I'm thinking how how similar it is to mine. And it's so true what you said. It's like everyone who's a specialist in their area, they always help everyone else but neglect themselves. I had the same situation. I made everybody millionaires through the financial advising I did, and professor for 10 years. But in many ways, often neglected my own wealth. Probably accounted for a lot of my struggles, which led me to this point. So, but I guess we can summarize and say, knowing that, it's half the battle, right?
Yeah, exactly right. No, exactly right. And now I'm excited because the good thing is I've taught so much. I know what things register. So it's going to be a lot easier to write the book. And I'm in process now. So I appreciate your asking.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. All right. So let's go to some interesting stuff about your business. You have actually played a direct and indirect role on so many different types of major authors, et cetera. So Robert Kiyosaki, for example, what role did you play in the success of Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad?
So his wife, Kim, called us up and said, we have Robert, my husband, has self-published this book. I think they had like 1,000 copies in the garage, she said, and we've self-published it. And we'd hired a PR firm. We just haven't gotten anything, can you help us? Because they'd heard about our reputation. And so I said, okay, well, let's get him on some radio shows. And so we had to write up some copy to position him to the media so that they'd be interested. And we wrote up that copy. We ran him in radio, TV interview report. And we did that for about 10 months. And he would get on radio shows. He's a really good storyteller. He really believes in, he calls it drawing the line in the sand and daring people to step over. So he kind of likes to be the kind of guest who's controversial, where in other words, the line in the sand would be half the audience agrees, half the audience disagrees. And they'd say, "Where's your book available?" And he'd say, "My book is available everywhere." His book wasn't available anywhere, but he knew that by getting people to ask for it,
Right.
that things would happen. And after about 10 months or so, he sent us a letter. He's like, "Wow, this is amazing. I've sold my first 250,000 copies, hit the New York Times bestseller list as a self-published book.
Wow.
You guys helped me do that. My next event is in," and basically he sold more because Warner then bought the rights to his book, and he sold a few million after that. And he said, "My next event is in Madison Square Garden."
Wow.
So when I went to interview him a couple of years ago, I said, "Wow, it's just great to be here in Scottsdale, Arizona." And he said, "Well, thanks for, welcome to the place you helped build," because he knew the power of publicity. He knew that the power of really getting out there. And so he's been very kind in his giving us a great testimonial and recommending people to us.
Thank you. And what you just said reminds me of Grant Cardone. I believe, I'm going to paraphrase. I think he says, money follows attention, right?
Yeah.
So, and that ties into what you do. So you're basically in the business of helping people get that attention, and you help Robert get the attention, which is where the money was trailing right behind that.
Yeah, it's like, a lot of times if you just get more eyeballs, I often say if you're 10 times more famous, what would you have? You'd have 10 times more money, 10 times more influence, 10 times more impact, 10 times more income, so it's so true.
10 times less public freedom.
That's right. That's right.
To look at it on the flip side, from terms of fame. But all right. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And the next one is very similar. So what role did you play in the success of Jack Canfield and Chicken Soup for the Soul?
So for Chicken Soup for Chicken Soup for the Soul with Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, they came to me. They were about $140,000 in credit card debt, which they freely, admit. And they were speakers. And Jack they had both been speaking and sharing stories when they spoke. And these people would say, "That story about, the puppy, is that in a book somewhere?" And they knew they had these stories that resonated. And they ended up, through a lot of persistence, getting published by a company called Health Communications, a small publisher in Florida. So when they came to us, they said, "We heard that it's important to get publicity." And Jack had interviewed best-selling authors at the time. He had interviewed and asked them how had they been successful. And publicity was a theme he kept hearing about. And in fact, the author of Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck, felt like the reason his book stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for so many years is that he was committed to averaging at least one media interview a day. And so with Chicken Soup, the thing about that book is it's kind of, in one level, it's like, oh, it's a nice bunch of stories, but how are we going to make it interesting to the media? So we would write up different copy pitching him to the producers. So for example, one hook was, can your audience identify these famous failures? And Jack would read descriptions of different people, like this guy, ran for Congress X number of times and failed. Who was it? Abraham Lincoln. Different people, and whenever they got one of the answers, a caller would win a free copy of the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. So it's really kind of coming up with turning the book, this nice book of stories, into having different angles, different hooks that would get the media to see, oh, okay, I see what we can do around this guest. Because you need to do that before you become a celebrity. Once it becomes known, then you can say, then it's a lot easier to get publicity. Oh, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, but that doesn't mean anything in the beginning. So in the very first book, way back before anybody had heard of them, we started putting them out there to the media, getting them interviews, and month after month, year after year, we got them in front of the media. And they got hundreds of interviews. So it was just exciting to be part of that.
How long did it take from the minute they met you to the point where they got their first big check of media interviews, et cetera, to really hit that sweet spot?
Well, you know what's interesting? They're really a good example of something of a lot of times people want like the big media interview, the Oprah equivalent, right?
Yeah.
But so much of it is regularly doing interviews. So to answer your question, it took them 13 months to hit the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
But they're convinced that it's that regularity of regularly doing interviews that really, made the difference. And a lot of authors aren't willing to kind of go to the effort of just, most people promote their book for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 months, and that's it. But in their case, they were really building. They were trying to do several things a day to promote their books, and I find that when people go at it with that mentality, it's amazing how lucky they get. When they're just working at it consistently. I remember I was invited down, Health Communications invited me down to a number of years ago. This is after they sold about 10 million books. They invited me to this retreat for the weekend down in Florida. And there was just really a time to relax, kick back, strategize, brainstorm. And I'm talking to Jack by the pool, and I said, "Hey, you want to go play tennis this afternoon?" He's like, "I'd love to, but I've got to go do an interview." And I'm thinking, this is like your time off, quote unquote. Really, you're going to go do an interview? I'm thinking it must be some big national show or something. I go, "What is it?" He said, "Oh, it's a radio show in Boca, that he was doing." So, I mean, this guy was committed to doing interviews. You realize, look, it's like a lot of authors. Greg Godek, who sold over 3 million books, we helped him get a lot of interviews in his career. And he said he's written a book called 1001 Ways to Be Romantic. And he never forget, he said, I look at it as my job is to do interviews. And I think Grant Cardone is probably the same way, right? Just regularly doing interviews. So I think that's just a shift in mindset.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. All right, we're going to move on to one follow-up to this point. Can you elaborate on your role in the success of other major influencers, similar to, so we talk about Robert, we talk about Jack. I know you have committed, you've helped out a lot of people, other major influencers. For example, I think the guy from Venus and Mars, I always get that confused. Gray.
Yeah, John Gray. Yeah.
Gray. Amongst so many others. Even I think Brendan Bouchard, did you help him out?
Brendan, look, we were an affiliate for Brendan. We have one thing Brendan had early on. So everybody has to think about, you need to think of all your experience. You need to find something that people will pay you money for now. So before he was doing kind of mindset type stuff and being like a motivational, guru and whatnot, he had done a book, Life's Golden Ticket, and he had done a good job getting sponsorships. And so what we did is we teamed up with him as affiliates to really promote his a program on how he got sponsors for that. And we got incredible results just putting people into his events and things. And so he was kind to give us a real acknowledgement in his book, Millionaire Messenger. But he's such a great marketer. Like there are, I think, he's somebody who'd be successful because he's willing to do these things that we've talked about: learn, practice, study, implement. And but he's a great guy. He's invited me to speak at his Experts Academy in the past. And that's the fun thing about my job, is I get to meet and work with, to some extent, all these talented people. There's a lady, Dr. Kellyanne Petrucci, who she had a vision for herself. She's a paleo expert, and she had a vision for herself of being on TV regularly and having an online business. And her friends were trying to be supportive. She's a nutritionist, and they're like, Kelly, like they believe in her, but it's a pretty big dream. They're like, is this kind of crazy? But again, she was willing. I mean, she joined a number of my programs, invested in herself in a number of different ways, even outside of the work we do, but she just really wanted to learn how to make it happen. And she ended up coming to our National Publicity Summit, meeting a producer, getting her first national TV appearance. And that's what you want. You want to get your first national show, because then if people figure you're good enough for, that, you're good enough for, if you're good enough for that show, you're good enough for me. And she's been a regular on Dr. Oz ever since. And now she's on PBS. Her book's a New York Times bestseller. She has a real healthy online business. So again, it's amazing what can happen when you just put the pieces together.
So once you get that national TV appearance,
Yeah,
dominoes start to fall.
Exactly. And, but getting some media training on, hey, what do I say for the segment? How do I put the segment together? What do I say to the media?
How to dress, which
all
you
that. So
also excel in. You have
and she would say, I had her she spoke then at one of my publicity summits. And her main message, everybody, was cold to the vision, which I think is important, because when you're an author or speaker and you're in the middle of writing your book, or you are in the middle of promoting your book or your company, there are these doubts, right? Is this really going to go anywhere? Is this going to work? And she said, look, you've got to be willing to hold fast to the vision. I know I asked Robert, I said, Robert, did you know when you're writing this book and working on it, with Sharon, did you know this was going to sell millions of copies? He said, no, I had no idea. I just wanted to do a really good job. And so there's a way in which, when you find the courage to just persist and keep going, it can be so much more successful than you even realize. Sure, there's failures, there's things that happen, but I'll never forget. I mean, there was a time where when we were doing our very first publicity summit, and we were promising all these media, and we had a lot of media connections. We had never done anything like this before, any huge event like this. And we're about halfway through, and I just said, boy, I just don't know if we can pull this off. And Bill said something, my brother, he said, maybe we can't, but we've said we're going to take it this far. Let's at least keep going and do what we said we would do, and then see what happens. And that ended up being we've done, well over 10 million in sales from that event. You could say that was a $10 million decision. See, I got to bring the finance in here to this podcast.
We're getting to it. I'm warming you up, warming up the stage. All right. Thank you, Steve. So just real quick, any other, maybe 20 seconds or so, any other top celebrities that you work with you want to just give a mention to?
Wow. Other top celebrities. I think that's probably a pretty good list so far. I'm sure somebody else may come to mind as we talk.
I know I saw you had an interview. You pulled out a box of like people that were thanking you and stuff from all the different things you did, that you're always getting mail that, wow, thank you, I got on CNN or I got on Fox News or whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, like for example, like Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo is somebody who is a psychologist, and she was trying to figure out how to get the word out about what she's doing, and came to our publicity summit, learned how to really put together a pitch, which is a positive word. The media say, hey, pitch me, give me an idea for what you'll do on my show. Met the producer of the Today Show, followed up, which is important because you got to follow up with people, and did it effectively, and ended up getting her first appearance on the Today Show, became a regular. Now we taught her how to get celebrity endorsements. She got an endorsement for her book by Shaquille O'Neal.
Wow.
Then she, because of this exposure, that was even before she got the Today Show, but then the Today Show, she became a regular keynote speaker and doing virtual presentations. And best-selling author, and now has a book called Better Than Perfect. So again, I think another example of holding to the vision. Could have easily said, this isn't going to happen, but she persisted. And yeah, she's somebody who comes to mind.
Thanks, Steve. All right, Steve. So pivoting from here, what does it take to become a major influence in any expertise starting from nothing? So I know you like to build people generally from a certain point, but let's assume, you have an expertise, right? You're an expert in bus driving or whatever it is, and you want to make this person an expert. So what does it take to build that influence? Maybe 1 or 2 minutes, if you can talk about that.
I think the first thing is to own the expertise, to own the fact that you are an expert, quote unquote. Now, the reason I say that, I say own your expert status you have now. You may not have, you may not have a PhD. I don't have a PhD. I get people pay me $10,000 a day for coaching. You own the expert status that you have right now. So if you know more about gardening vegetables than the average person, and I know nothing, but you get me interested in it, then you, in my view, are the expert. If I like how you talk about it and the fact that you are talking about it, you're the one who puts the idea in my head to start growing some vegetables, I'm going to listen to you first. So that should be encouraging. I think a lot of times people discount the guy driving the bus or woman driving the bus. Hey, I know a lot about bus driving, and she might think, well, who's really going to listen to me? Well, I've never driven a bus. So talk about it, and then you could start to, anything that you think you're weak on, you could start to interview other people or bring them in, right, to what you're doing. And you could co-author a book with them if you need to, or just interview them. So I think first to own the expert status. Then I would start teaching what you know. Look for ways to even teach for free some of your thoughts. If it's about how to be a better bus driver, here are some thoughts. Start sharing it with other bus drivers. And they might say, oh my gosh, I didn't know you did that to get the kids to behave. That's really cool. What else do you do? And now you start seeing that that's resonating. Then you can go ahead and say, hey, then create something where people can pay you money and say, I'm doing a 1-day workshop on how to have a lot less stress as a bus driver and have a lot more fun, as to use the metaphor. And so I just the willingness to do those things, to own your expertise, to have something people can buy. It could be they hire you for one-on-one consulting, but the willingness to say, I have a program. So I remember, there was a time where my whole company was radio, TV, and report. That was the only thing we did. And I was invited to speak at a conference, and this was just after 9/11. So there was a period years ago where, if you remember, the economy just really kind of came to a standstill.
Oh yeah.
And we had overhead, and we had a lot of, so we didn't have sales coming in. And I was panicked. I was stressed. I was truly, and I mean this, I was praying, God, help me. Help me here. What we need, help me save this business. And the only thing that I really had in front of me was this speaking opportunity. And I'd spoken at this event before, and I would pay my travel, and I would go there for 3 or 4 days. I would speak, and I'd hang out there for 3 or 4 days. And it would cost me like $1,500 to go, and I'd come out with like $800 back. It just wasn't worth going. But that was the only thing I had in front of me. And I remember praying about this, and it was like God said, maybe it's not the people. Maybe it's you. Maybe you could change a few things, and I had actually gotten some coaching around that time on just how to deliver a presentation where people find it very valuable, and at the end they want to enroll in something. And I realized I was never giving the people a very direct offer of how we could help them. And in fact, a lot of people there they were just working on their books. They didn't really need publicity in the moment. They needed consulting on how to make their book more mediagenic. And so I created for the first time in my life a little yellow order form. And I remember just being terrified, standing on the stage saying, I have a program. And I handed this out. And by the way, my brother had said to me before this conference, he said, if you don't come back with like at least 20 grand, we're going to be out of business. So, that's the pressure I'm going through as I'm delivering this talk. But a lady comes down right before I even finish talking, and she hands in a yellow form and another form. This is a $1,700 package, one after the other. And we didn't do $20,000. We did $67,000 that day. And I tell you, I mean, to me, it was a fusion of two things. It was a fusion of make an offer and marketing. And it was a fusion of, prayers are answered. I mean, I really just thought of where Jesus, goes to these fishermen and tells them to cast their nets, and the fish are just bursting the nets. And so in this mysterious way, marketing and faith and spirituality and things just came together, and serving people. I was blaming the people for not buying, but the fact of the matter is my offer wasn't right. And I had not been skilled and confident to present the offer. So the point is, practice, learn. When you go to people, that's one thing I do with my clients very early on. We teach you, how to own your expert status, how to say what you do, how you help people, and what your program is, and get that defined in your own mind. Because once you get clear and confident on that, you're going to find people are like, I want to work with you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you sharing that story on the interval of this question. I've heard you say that story before, and actually, from the moment I heard it, I had connected with you because I realized that you also were an entrepreneur. You went through the same cycle and pressure of an entrepreneur. And the relevancy to this question, when I asked you this question, I said, can you elaborate on a role? I'm sorry. What does it take to become a major influencer in any expertise starting from nothing? Well, you had a pivoting moment there because you almost had nothing. If you walked out of that room and didn't shine that day, you were back to square one.
Right.
And that's what it takes really to change, to get that influence. You went out there, you gave it your best, and you were determined to do that. So, and that's a true quality of an entrepreneur: persistency and just not giving up.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I totally agree. Not giving up, asking, a question, how can I make this the best thing that ever happened to me? How can I make it the best thing that ever happened to me? How, I've seen again and again that it's like, if, how can I better serve the people with what I'm offering? Sometimes shifting the offer just of what you're creating a new program that really, Robert Collier said, enter the conversation going on in people's minds. What's going on in their mind, the people that you're serving? How could you just have a program? If it's for the bus drivers, to use our analogy, great. What do they want? What are they frustrated with? And I have just seen again and again that, it's a lot of people don't talk about it, but I have seen that, prayer gets answered. And I used to think God didn't really care about business and all that, but I found he cares about everything, and so, learning to ask for help, divine help and human help. That's the other thing, right? We have to learn to ask for the sale, so to speak, but also learn to ask for help in the things that we're not good at. And so there's a lot of humility. You need both that combination of confidence, which, by the way, the word means with faith. It's interesting, but you got to confidence, faith in yourself, confidence and humility. And the tough times do keep us humble, don't they?
Absolutely. Steve, just as a side note to what we just talked about, I always wondered what your response would be to this. If we got 8 billion people in this world, so Brendan Burchard talks about the millionaire messenger. Well, we can make an expert out of anybody pretty much if you have the right tools. Right? I'm confident if I gave you a guy off the street, whatever expert his specialty or her specialty would be, you can make them into something great. But 8 billion people in this world, do we have room for 8 billion experts? I mean, where's the line draw where we got too many experts, right? I mean, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, I guess, I never thought about it this way, but like you think about like insurance, if everybody had a claim, the insurance company would be out of business, right? And if everybody in the world claimed their expert status, and then, yeah, you're right, there'd be too many. We wouldn't need them. But the fact of the matter is that most people don't claim the expert status they have. And maybe another way to look at it too, I think to some extent, the fact that if when somebody's watching this podcast now and they're interested in either writing a book or getting publicity, I find very often that's not just from ego. I mean, they may enjoy, they might be terrified of it, but they might naturally enjoy being interviewed. Depends on their personality, but it's because they have something inside them that's important, maybe to share about finance, or whatever, publicity or nutrition or meditation, or there's something inside them. Now, if you really think about it, well, that's pretty special. That makes you a special person. If there's something that you want to share with people and you want to talk about it and you want to get them to be aware of it, that's pretty special. And, even the business, if it's a business you started, well, why'd you start it? Right. There's something, some people call a gift, a calling, call it what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is something that, my father once said, I was thinking at the time, he was a lawyer. And I said, I don't know, should I be a lawyer? I said, why would I be a lawyer? There's so many lawyers. He said, yeah, but not enough good ones. And I would say there's just not enough people that are willing to claim their expert status and learn how to get it out there effectively.
That's a brilliant answer. I appreciate that, Steve. I know I gave you a deep thought question. I actually got goosebumps thinking about this when you mentioned the word calling. I'm like, yeah, I think that might be true.
I mean, think about like, here's an interesting, okay, Dr. Finance, right? Do you know anybody else who has your same passion? Like if you think about what what you've lived, what you've been through, and the desire that you have, and to get this out, to do this podcast and the other things you're doing, the books, and to do it the way you're doing it, and the things you're thinking about, and the things you're reading about, and the things you're trying to put together, like, do you know anybody in this planet? Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon, anybody, any impressive name you want to throw, they all have their gifts. Don't get me wrong, but that's unique to you. Agreed?
Absolutely, Stephen. While you're asking me that question, I'm thinking of E.O. Wilson. He's a famous biologist. I put him in my last book, The Survival of the Richest. And I watched an interview of him, and one of the things he says is that I'm just shocked that, because he's a biologist, but a specialist in ants. And he goes, I'm just shocked that everyone else in the world isn't as passionate about ants as I am. That's what I'm hearing it. Now, it's a very fascinating subject. I give him that. I like it a lot, but that's not me, right? That's not you. And I guess you're right. It's kind of like we all have that thing, and maybe it was from childhood or whatever, that just really brought this out of us, this passion. And sometimes it's unexplained, and you can try all day long to explain it and rationalize it. But at the end of the day, maybe it is just that calling.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's a gift, and it's unique to you, and I think it's important to say that, because a lot of times the things that we take for granted, we just figure, oh, everybody else knows that, or there's other people out there that will promote. But really, there's a lot of people who don't know it. Okay. And you can find them. All right. And that is what makes a great author, a great speaker. It starts from that, and combining that with marketing know-how is pretty unstoppable.
Thank you, Steve. This is a great question. We got to bring this up on Clubhouse one night. Or
Absolutely.
one afternoon. Yeah. All right, Steve. So just I want to respect your time. So I want to try to get through these questions pretty fast. So please tell us maybe a quick, like 30-second commercial of your National Publicity Summit and other programs that you offer. I know you already mentioned it, but if you could just summarize that for everyone, just to make a nice segment for them.
Yeah. So for our National Publicity Summit, if you'd like to learn how to get publicity, what to say, what to do, be trained, and get connections and actually meet the media face to face by Zoom, just like Anthony and I are talking right now, and have one-on-one time to be able to get to know them, get on their radar. Then check out our National Publicity Summits, nationalpublicitysummit.com, and you can read all about it, see all the proof, see all the people who have been there and have said it changed their life. And we have people who say it's been worth millions and millions of dollars to them, people who've landed major national press as a result. So that, I think I did it in 30 seconds.
That was perfect. Thank you. The timer was off. Yeah. So, and this ties into our previous question before that. Why do you love publicity so much, PR so much? Like the way I love finance, the way E.O. Wilson loves ants. What is it that gave you this calling?
What I love about it is the creativity. I've seen so many times where you try something and you put something out to the media and it just bombs. They're not interested. And then you change the headline. You just change something like so, and the person now gets dozens of interviews from that one initiative. And that to me is just really exciting. I identify with the challenge of getting the word out. And I know the media, they need guests, whether they're podcasters, TV producers, radio hosts, they need guests. And so I have a real heart for entrepreneurs, authors, people who are trying to make a difference, trying to just get their word out, monetize what they're doing. And I love the creativity. I love how just one new approach, one new suggestion can take them from not getting very much to getting a ton of publicity and a ton of sales.
Thank you, Steve. And you certainly helped a lot of people out. So I'm sure that that's part of what you get out of it as well, the feeling of joy.
Yeah, and making a difference. I'm not an expert on marriage or autism or meditation or finance, but if I can get you out there, I'm changing the world that way. If I can get somebody who's an expert on bipolar out there, I'm changing the world in that way. And so it just really allows me to make more of an impact. But I think the other thing that fires me up is just getting people to find their confidence and their courage. I love it when that's, I think, a big thing with the summit is people meet the media and they're like, oh my gosh, like Carol Tuttle came to our publicity summit and she's like, I'm never going to be intimidated by media again. She went home and she went to her local TV and she said, hey, they didn't know who she was. We need to talk. I'm going to give you some different segment ideas for your show. And she became a regular right on our local TV. And it's just, amazing. When people have confidence and courage, that's life transforming. And I think publicity really gives that to you. And things like our summit coaching and stuff like that we do really helps with that.
And that makes you sort of like a gatekeeper, really. You're the guy who is letting people through, helping them get through, and to connect them from where they stand on that street corner to potentially being their own talk show host or some major influencer of some sort.
You know, sometimes I have clients that get so big, they don't even return my calls anymore. Don't be like that, Anthony. Don't be
I
like
will,
that.
I promise you, I will definitely, I'll come back one day. I'll do a testimonial for you, just like Kiyosaki. You'll have me on your masterminds and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
I'll be there for you.
Absolutely. We'll have people coming to Philly.
Yeah, exactly. We can have a little retreat here in Philly. We don't have to
Exactly
go too
right.
far. So what do you like Shakespeare and theater so much? I know that's one of your passions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm an auditory learner. So when I hear something, that's what resonates. And I remember sitting in Mrs. Ortman's 10th grade English class, and we were watching Derek Jacobi, Sir Derek Jacobi perform Hamlet. And I just felt these words were incredible. And as a teenager, I just felt like I could cathart, you know. When I had too much homework, I could say, oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, you know, I just loved it. And I had one teacher who she would recite it, and then she would talk about all the deeper meanings. And I found that when you understood what the words meant, you're like, oh my gosh, that's just so incredible. What an incredible statement of human nature or of life. Like there's one character in Hamlet who, just as an aside, there's all these asides, like they're just these quick things before he says the main thing. And he says like, oh, Gertrude, when sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. First, we've got, it's just a little like aside, but it's just like, that's just so great. You know, or hey, you know, oh, but soft, you know, we're talking us, but soft. The morn in russet mantle clad walks o'er the dew of yon high eastward hill. Break we up our, you know, it's just like these little things of beauty. It's just like, who said this? Who wrote this? So it's staggering, the genius of Shakespeare. You know, when you see it done well, you watch Derek Jacobi, you watch like the Royal Shakespeare Company do a show, and then you read it. If you know, comes to life.
Do you ever want to become an actor eventually?
Yeah, well, you know, I said to myself, I'm going to play that part. I'm going to play Hamlet someday. When I was in high school, I said this to myself, and I majored in English. I didn't study acting or anything, but in my local, I go to a Presbyterian church that actually has a community theater. They do a show once a year, and guess what show I persuaded him to do? I was persuaded him to do Hamlet. I said, you should do Hamlet like a year from now, because I figured that would give me enough time to prepare. And so what I did was I decided that there was going to be a lot more competition for this part. I knew there was going to be serious actors, and I didn't have much of an acting resume at all. A lot of enthusiasm. That's about it. But I said, I'm going to show up to that audition. I'm going to have learned all the lines. And I'm going to have worked with an acting coach, actually worked with Jeffrey, who, you know, works with us now. He had a theater at the time. And I dissected every line. I showed up to that audition ready to play the part, totally having memorized everything. And I just wanted to get cast like as an understudy, play it once. But they cast me as the lead, you know,
Wow.
and then I was just really excited and passionate. And I said, you guys should don't just do 2 or 3 performances. Like usually you should do like 10 performances. This is the greatest play in the English speaking language. And they're like, you could tell they're like, well, yeah, but we love your enthusiasm, but who's really going to come see you, you know, play Hamlet, you know? And so I said, okay, I'll do the marketing too. So what I did is I wrote to all these famous actors and asked for one piece of advice to get for playing Shakespeare. And I heard from Mel Gibson, I heard from Derek Jacobi, I heard from all these, you know, famous actors, Emma Thompson and Dustin Hoffman. And then I actually got publicity around the idea of what did these famous people say to this actor, me, who had like no experience, rank amateur. And we got written up in the Philadelphia Weekly. We got written up, you know, a bunch of places. And that was one of the big things that helped us sell out the show. So I often say, you know, when I'm speaking, the actor in me got a standing ovation every night. Now, maybe because they were glad it was over, but the marketer in me is even happier to say every single night was a sold out house.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a lot of, just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's awesome. Thank you, Steve. I know you're very passionate about that. So I had to put that question there. So your TEDx talk is called "How Do You Sell Without Selling?" Can you give us a quick summary of that?
Yeah, how to sell without selling your soul. So it's really based on this idea that I think everybody has a misconception of what it is to sell. We think it's somehow you're manipulating someone to doing something they don't want to do, or no. And so what at the heart of it, I believe selling is love. It's what do you do when you love somebody? You know, if you have a friend or a brother or sister, and they're thinking of doing something that you think would be good for them, but they're not sure. Maybe go back to school or start a business or something. What do? You would encourage them. You know, I say that selling, SELL, is to sincerely encourage by listening and loving. That's what it really is. And that's what I talked about. The TEDx organizer said, talk about something you've never talked about before, but that you think is really important. And that's what I decided to talk about, because I think a lot of times people just don't really own the fact that, you know, if you come from a place of love and service and you listen to people, then, you know, then you can help people by encouraging them to do something that is in their best interests. Now, it has to be in their best interests. There are times, obviously, when you say to someone, I've talked to people sometimes and said, hey, you know, I don't think you'd be really right for our publicity summit. I don't think it'd be a good investment for you with your particular topic, you know, and what you've got. You know, I want this to be a win-win for you. So you have to definitely have that attitude. So, but there are other times where people really, you know, they should sign up for the gym if you work for the gym, or they should enroll in the coaching program if you have a coaching program. But you know, you're just not as effective as you could be. And that's why I think it's important to learn how to be.
Yeah, I love that idea of incorporating love in the sales process, because it really is true. And it comes down to serving, right? So
Yeah.
thank you, Steve. And can one book change the world?
One book can definitely change the world. No question. Bible did pretty well.
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich did pretty well. You know, one book can change the world, and it can certainly change our corner of the world, which I think is another important piece. You know, anybody working on a book, if it changes one person's life, how many lives does it need to change for it to be worth writing?
Mm-hmm.
If it's on your heart as something you want to give expression to, first of all, the first life it's going to change is yours, because you're going to learn things. You're going to discover things about yourself in the journey. As I working on my book now, I'm learning things about my topic and myself that I never saw before. So it's an incredible journey of transformation. And if one person, a dozen people, 100, 1,000, how many, you know, how many emails would you need to get for people to say, thank you so much for writing your book? It doesn't have to be millions, you know, and yet when you come from that place, you might just be like Robert Kiyosaki or Jack Canfield, like, oh my gosh, sold millions. And I just didn't expect it when I was writing it.
Yeah, because that was the end goal. The goal right now was just to serve, and then let the dominoes fall from there.
Yeah, and then you're passionate about it, and then you're going to do the things to get the word out about it.
Thank you, Steve. Brilliant response. What role does so a question on networking. We're getting into finance pretty soon. What role has networking played in your life?
It's big. I mean, business is a relationships game. Life is about relationships. And so I often find that, you know, I prefer, if I'm going to talk to somebody, to be introduced, you know, and to ask someone, could you introduce me to this person? And that's something I think a lot of times, there's an author that wrote a book called The Power of Who. He was a big recruiter from the NFL, did a lot of work with the NFL players. I met him one time, and he said, when people look for a job, they go to people who don't know them, who don't really care about them, and they give them a resume like a headhunter. But what they really should do is they should go to people who already know them from previous work they've done, from school, from the community, and say, look, I've been laid off. I'm looking for a new job. Here's what I'm looking for. If you know anybody, could you please connect me? And now it takes humility to do that, to ask for help, but it's often like asking for directions when you're lost. I do that all the time. Like I ask to make sure I'm on the right track. They say men don't ask for directions. I ask all the time. I'm in the right track. I'm just the schuylkill. Great. And so ask. People want to help you. The people right around you, they could be clients, colleagues, employees, former friends that you haven't seen in a while. But if you ask them, who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know who is? And you have a target of who you're trying to reach. It's amazing. And would you be willing to text that person and just connect us? I love that as a tool. Just, would you be willing to just send them a text and connect us?
Thank you, Steve. All right, Steve. So is mentoring important? And who is some of your mentors? Maybe 30 seconds or so.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I still learn from Jack Canfield. I'm doing retreats with him several times a year, and he's been a wonderful mentor and an example. Great mentor early on. So much to learn from Dan Kennedy. There's also somebody named Dave Kahle, Kahle, who talks about sales, but also running he's kind of bringing your Christian faith as into your business as it empowers you. And he's written a book called The Good Book on Business, and it really stimulates one's thinking about how faith and work go hand in hand. Mentoring
is definitely important, though, right?
Would you say?
You would definitely recommend mentoring for everyone. It's very important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I definitely would. I would recommend either ask somebody, would you mentor me? Or I would ask, or form your own mastermind group, and just say, people that are impressive, and just bring them together. You could be the one who brings them together, and gets them talking and learn, and so absolutely, learn from, it's called OPI. People, I've heard it, other people's influence is so much, they've made mistakes, and they can teach you. But I will say, sometimes I do feel like, oh, I'm too busy, I'll just read a book, whatever. But I find whenever I can get with people who've been there, done it, they just can tell you, do it like this.
You go a lot faster.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Steve. So, Steve, we just have a few more questions. I want to do a quick check on your time. I think we'll be done in a few minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, I've got about 5 minutes. Can we do that?
Okay, yeah. So figure 30 seconds a question or less, and I think
okay.
We'll run right through it. Do we need money to survive? They're all easy questions.
Absolutely. Got to have money to survive. Absolutely.
What are your favorite financial books? Maybe 3.
My favorite financial books. I like, there's a book called The Psychology of Money. I like the 4-Hour Workweek. I like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I like I like Dave Ramsey. So those are some ones I recommend.
That's good. Thank you, Steve. Is finance necessary for everyone?
Yeah, understanding finance, understanding both in business and in life, very, very important.
Thank you, Steve. How important is having a purpose in business?
It's not important at all. It's all about the money. No. Well, no, purpose is extremely important. And, wanting to make money for many people can be part of their purpose, but it's just part of it. And so what's that larger reason for doing the business? It might be because, and sometimes it's a mystery, why you're doing this business, why you decide to create this. It may only make sense to you and it may not completely make sense. You just want to do it. And that's okay. We don't have to question it so much. You may discover later, be able to put it into words, but you may not always be able to put it into words.
And what's your purpose, Steve?
My purpose is to help people achieve their dreams. I often say my mission is to help people achieve their mission.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Steve. We got 2 more questions left. You're doing great. What would you like to accomplish in the next 10 years or so, and why?
Next 10 years. One thing I want to do is I want to run the New York City Marathon, but when I'm 60. I ran the Paris Marathon when I was 20.
Wow.
And, I'm not nearly in as good a shape at all, so it's a good, I grew up outside New York, and the New York City Marathon was the thing. So that's one goal. And in our business, I want to really grow my business to just have much more impact. I feel like we're just getting started, even though we've been doing it for 30 years. And I'm looking forward to now, applying all that I know from all these years to my own books and, owning that part rather than the cobbler spending so much time helping other people, to walk more into the author side, my own author side as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Steve. Awesome. And last question, what would you like to leave as your legacy to this world?
Well, I definitely want to leave some books. Books are a great legacy. I'd like to leave a company that can run very well without me or Bill. I want to leave good kids that are not perfect, but are good examples. So far, so good, but it's always an up and down thing for all of us. Sometimes we're, good examples sometimes, but yeah, I'd say those are some of the things I want to leave.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I wanted to thank you, Steve, again for coming here, and I appreciate you spending the time with us. And before we close out, I'd like to just leave the floor for you for a moment. If you want to say any last words, where they can find more information about you or your company, anything you'd like to talk about, the floor is yours, Steve.
Well, one thing we offer is we do have a special report called six-figure mistakes authors make. And so people, if they just simply go to our website at authorsuccess.com, it's a 39-page report, goes into a lot of mistakes people make that you want to avoid, and really what to do to improve your odds of success as an author and as an entrepreneur. Plus, you can find out about different things that we do. We mentioned the National Publicity Summit. If you're interested in being part of a retreat with Jack Canfield, the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, we have information there. If you just want information on how to get your book written, published, marketed, we have a whole number of programs. If you would like to have an online course done where you don't have to do the tech work, you just teach your material, we have somebody help you get organized, and we shoot it and create the whole course. So those are all things you can check out at authorsuccess.com. You can find out more about me. You can find out more about our programs. And we just really look forward to serving you. And you've probably got a vision for, it may be a half-baked vision, it may be a foggy vision of who you want to be as an influencer, as an author, speaker. But we'd love to be able to talk to you. We're happy to give you a free consultation and move you forward.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. All right, folks. So you've been listening to the Dr. Finance Live podcast. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Criniti IV, also known as Dr. Finance. We had Stephen Harrison here today. Steve, PR expert. Definitely check out Steve's websites he just mentioned. Follow, like, and subscribe to both of us. Okay. You're on social media too, right? Right, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
People can.
Yep.
So all over social media. Also, you can find more information about this podcast, et cetera, everywhere, especially my website here, drfinance.info. And don't forget to check out these lovely books here, Necessity of Finance, the most important lessons in economics and finance. And then my last book, The Survival of the Richest. In that order is usually best. So thanks again, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you so much, Steve. Again, I appreciate you being here. Definitely.
Hey, man, thank you for the opportunity. Great chatting with you. Appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye now.